All right,
You
that's
doing
good.
okay?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, good. Did you just get off work?
I just had another interview, so sorry it went over a little bit. I
Oh,
did. I worked this morning and then drove out to Long Island and then did one interview and you're my second. So she was a little bit late getting to that last interview, so I'm sorry.
oh, it's fine. It's fine. No problem at all. I'm curious how early you have to get up to do your job.
Well, so in the summer, we live out on Long Island. I have this little cottage out here. It's a small little place, and she goes to camp out here. She's in an equestrian camp right now. And then before this, she did like a swim and sports camp. So we have a lot of friends out here. So a lot of people from the city leave the city during the summer. And this is where we quarantined during COVID. So I was grateful to have this place because I've had it for about 5 years. And out here, I get up at 2:30. I leave for work at 3:30 and get into the city at 4:30 and go straight to hair and makeup. But in the city, I can leave my house. I leave at like 4:20 to be at work by 4:30. So during the school year, we're in the city.
Wow.
It's not
Wow.
bad though. I mean, Dwayne, I come home and I have all day. I mean, the book tours, I've been working during the day a lot. And if they need me to go out on a story and during election season, I'm traveling a lot. But generally, I have the day and I can work out and I can go pick up my daughter and it's great.
Well, we had a exciting election night last night around the country too, so I'm sure it was a good morning for talking today.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we had some breaking some big news to talk about this morning for sure.
So, Ainsley, how did you tell me a little bit of your journey and where you started from, and at what point you knew this is what you wanted to do? Did people say, "Man, you tell a good story," or when you realized you had the gifts for the career that you're doing?
Thank you. I wanted to be an actress growing up, and I was very involved in theater and loved being on the stage. I loved old movies. My mom and I would watch just old Hollywood movies that were many of them were black and white. She would tell me about all the actresses, and my mother loved the finer things. We didn't have a lot. We were middle class. We had enough. We had, mom and dad worked really hard to put us in good schools and find the best districts in our state. And we when we would move to different cities, we would live in that area because that was important. Education was important to my parents. My mom's an educator. And so, but she grew up in a family where her great grandmother passed on her china and her silver and that kind of thing to my mom. And so she loved old Hollywood. And so I used to ask God, why was I born in South Carolina? Why wasn't I born in Hollywood? Why wasn't I born in New York City? So I had that instinctive just desire for the stage at an early age. So I was involved in theater. And then when I went to college, mom and dad said, we're not paying for you to major in theater, but I did take some drama classes. And then I discovered broadcast journalism. And that was something that my parents were allowing me to major in, but it also had the TV element. And then I figured out I'm really good at this and I really like it. Thanks be to God. I mean, for God, God gets the glory. But I was like, I think this is what he's created me to do. And I was always curious as a child. I get that from my dad. My dad probably should have been a doctor because if there was an accident on the side of the road, he would go a little slowly or stop and pull over and help them. If there was a dog that was injured or a stray dog, he would always bring the dog home. My dad is just really compassionate, but also really curious and tough as nails. So I think I get that from my dad, where I was always interested in the crime scene and seeing the pictures, and it didn't bother me. I love watching surgeries. And so I had such a curiosity. So when I discovered broadcast journalism, I thought, this is right up my alley. And I thought I was going to just do hard news, breaking news, hard news at the local level. And then Fox called, and I was really nervous because I hadn't studied politics. I wasn't involved in politics. I had worked for a senator, but that was just because the pay was good. And I was in college, and one of my sorority sisters said she was leaving and I needed a job. So I took that job, started learning about policy and learning about politics. But I was nervous about reporting on it in a breaking news setting by myself in the middle of the night, because I started working at Fox on the overnights and did that for 7 years. So I was worried about covering breaking news and talking about politics. Now I love it. And I have the experience to do it, which actually taught me a valuable lesson. I look at Tiger Woods, who's this amazing golf player, and obviously he had that gift at an early age. But I think if what did it say in Outliers? I think it's 15,000 hours or 10,000 hours. Well, I can't remember the number, but if you do something so long, you will become an expert. You will become a professional and could get paid for it. So I just feel more confident now about that. But it's really cool to see how God gave me this desire. I stayed away from Hollywood and stayed away from movies and commercials and that kind of thing, which is a blessing, even though I really wanted to pursue that for a long time. And now I'm in broadcasting, and I feel like among certain circles respected, and God's voice is speaking through me every day on air. I'm able to talk about God on Fox, and I still live in New York City. And I just know God gave me God gave me so much, and I just want to use what he's given me to bless him and to get people to know him and to love him and to eternity eventually.
The verse that we're all familiar with, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Right.
Some people interpret that as that word give is actually place, and that God sometimes he will place desires in your heart that you didn't know you had to start out with. So like when you say, my desire was to be an actress, but then God places another desire in your heart and he lets you walk into that. So that's awesome. It's a great journey. Thank you for
first
sharing
have to
too.
trust in the Lord. Trust in
That's
the Lord.
right. Yes.
The desires of your heart, that the Bible says. If you trust
Yes.
him, it's so much easier. People say, I don't want to become a Christian because I'm going to have to change. It's not going to be fun. I'm going to have to give this up or that up. You want to give that up and just trust him, and he'll take those desires from you and replace it with, or give you different desires. And it is so much better. Life is freeing, because then if you lose your job, you might cry for a second because you're embarrassed, but God's going to take care of you because you trust him.
Right.
And he's going to give you something better.
Yes. So we're going to talk about your book in just a moment. But while we're on this subject, though, I'm very curious. I'd like to know maybe your top 1 or 2 memories since you've been in this position. I mean, there's always there's something that people kind of cling to. I've asked other interviewers that, a favorite interview or just a memory that you'll never forget. So I'd love to hear that.
So many things come to mind. I remember walking into Fox News, and I still do this. I still look up 6th Avenue and I can see Central Park at the very end. We're between 47 and 48. And we're on 6th Avenue. So I'm walking into Fox News and I always look up and I see the American flag and I see Radio City Music, and we're in the middle of Rockefeller Center. And I just think, I can't believe this, God, that you have given me all this. And I look around that building and I remember some sad things that have happened, news that I've found out inside that building, but the blessings and the wonderful things that have happened inside that building trump everything else. And I wouldn't even take away the sad things that have happened. I remember walking into my boss's office and telling her I was having a baby. And she was so supportive and threw me a baby shower and was showered with gifts from her. And she said, take as much time as you need, enjoy this. When I finally delivered, and then they gave me a promotion in the middle of that. I remember the first time the double doors opened into the studio and I walked in, and I'm walking to the curvy couch and I'm walking into the studio, and my life changed. Geraldo Rivera's sitting in the hallway, and I brought my daughter into work that day. And I said, Geraldo, do you mind babysitting Hayden for just 2 seconds while I run on set and I meet to say hey to my new co-anchors? Because I just got promoted and I'm getting this job, and I'm still on maternity leave, but I'm here just to say hi. And he was like, I got her. I've got Hayden. So I took a picture of that. Geraldo was her first babysitter, which is so funny. I used to watch Geraldo when I was little,
Me too.
He got the chair thrown in his face, his nose was broken.
I remember that episode.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm good friends with Geraldo. So just how it's just funny how God, he has such a sense of humor. He just works things out. And when you get older, it's almost like, it's not you're callous to it. You realize that we're all equal. So it's not it's just weird that Geraldo's out there with my daughter and I'm walking in and I'm going to host one of the major morning shows that millions of people watch. Right. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying, God, you're so good. God, you're so good. That's a great memory. I remember cooking on set with my parents, and my mom is such a good chef. My mom had a stroke 4.5 years ago, diabetic, dialysis 3 times a week, lives in, we converted our basement into an apartment, and she has 24-hour care. My dad lives upstairs and, is with her every day. God bless him. And she's gone through it, but she's so tough. And she always said this to me, "I'm so glad you were born," which is the title of my book. And that's why I wrote it, because we don't know how much longer we're going to have with my mom. She's doing great. She's strong as an ox. I know that she loves Jesus. So even if God takes her one day, or if he takes her, which he will one day, he'll take all of us, then I'll be at peace with that. I'll miss her because she's my mom, and she was on set with us cooking her just a simple recipe, her pimento cheese. And we're from the South, and pimento cheese is a huge thing there. And she just showed this easy, simple recipe of how to make pimento cheese. But I was going through some old videos and watching that the other day, and it's just like, life is so precious, so wonderful. Just enjoy it, accept Jesus, enjoy your life and live for him. It is so wonderful. And then when you take your last breath, your family and your loved ones will know you're going to a better place, and we're going to see you again. So that's a great memory. Our lives change. And right now, that's just something that, sorry for crying, but it's just something that because my mom's gone through so much. And so the book is special to me because of that.
I had a similar journey with my mother. So I appreciate you sharing that. She had strokes, and she passed years ago. My kids were little. I was just sharing this with somebody yesterday who's dealing with the loss of their mother. Yeah. There's a community in that. We go through that, and I have had to. Now there's some distance. I look at it and I'm like, it was hard to be raising little kids while she was dying, but those kids gave her such joy. In her last day.
She loves those babies. She's just, but her mind is there, and that's what's so hard. She just can't express herself. And
mine too. Yes.
Yeah.
Like some people talk about, they went out of their mind or whatever, and that's a terrible thing. Alzheimer's, when they start losing it. My mother was sharp until the end, and that's what made it hard on me, knowing what she was going through. She knew everything,
even
knowing
her how final active they used to be.
Anyway, good segue into your book, because that's something we need to hear. I'm glad you're born for such a time as this. That book, that message. It's not a message that everybody rallies behind, but we should. I'm glad you're born. I'm glad you upended my life, or whatever challenges go with it. It's a joyful thing. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I wrote this book, when you write a book, it's in the works for about a year. So this was before Roe v. Wade, and this wasn't written for that. Because, excuse me, I love everybody. We've all had our struggles there. I love everybody. I know what my beliefs are about that, but if you've experienced that, I'm sure you're grieving. I had a miscarriage, and still, I think about that when I read about it, because I wrote it in my book. I wrote a book about my faith, and I'll read those chapters and I can still cry over that, because it was a hard time. I wanted a baby so badly, but then 3 months later I conceived Hayden. So the book was really written with my mom's message. I'm so glad you were born, which is what she always said to us on our birthdays. And so I always say it on air. So it really just was celebrating our children, or celebrating everybody's birthday, even if you're 45 years old. And I'm so glad you were born, because you've made an impact on other people's lives, and God's using you. And the book was written because my daughter and I have so much fun in my house. I'm a single mom, and I have this precious 6.5-year-old, and we do dance parties around the house. I have a big bucket of instruments, and I pull it out and we crank the music up and blare it. And we run around the house playing all these different instruments, and we change the instruments whenever we feel like it. And we just have fun together. And so I grew up with parents that were both working constantly, and mom would come home and have to cook for all of us, and dad would come home, and if the garage door broke, that was stressful. If we had to, dad paid for all of our college because he put himself through college, and that was stressful for him. But I'm so grateful to him for working so hard. He had 3 jobs at some points. I remember when I got
Right.
Fox and Friends, I called him and I said, Dad, how many jobs did you work to get me here? And I said, I have my dream job. And dad said, Ainsley, I worked, 3 jobs. I'm so proud of you. So, my parents were wonderful, but there were stresses in our home. And so I had a goal when I was raising my child. Now, granted, I had her at 39 years old. So my parents had us immediately. They got out of college, they got married at 21, they had their first child at 22. So they didn't have the funds that they needed, the wealth that they needed to raise 3 kids. And they made it work, and they did it beautifully. But life was stressful for them. So I just said, when I have children, no yelling, no screaming. My house will be an oasis. I want my child to always come home. I always want my child to be happy. I always want my home to be happy, knowing she won't always be happy, but I want her to find refuge in these walls. And
Right.
this house is so small, but I love small. We have our fireplace out there, and we have 2 chairs, swivel chairs in front of the fireplace with an ottoman. We put our feet up on the ottoman. Hayden and I will read. We will talk. We will read the Bible. We will listen to praise and worship music in front of the fire. It might be snowing outside. This is our oasis, and we love being together, and we love this home. And that's what the book is about. Have fun with your children, celebrate their lives. You only have 18 years with them, and then they go off to live their own lives. So just embrace that time, love them, have fun with them, tell them you're so glad that they were born, because there's such blessings in our lives, and it's the next generation, and they're so important.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to let you get back to you probably have a full day of interviews. So it's just been a great honor to talk to you this morning and hear your heart.
Thank
And I appreciate you just sharing so personally. And I look forward to seeing more of you, and hope this book does really well, and
you.
people really respond to the message.
Well, you are such a good man, and I really appreciate you having me on. And thank you for what you're doing for the kingdom and for other people. You are very important, and I'm so glad you were born.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much. Have a great day.
too.